A user interface is like a bad joke. If you have to explain it, it means that it's not that good.
Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast presented by Hippo Direct. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur or innovator every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, digital marketing dude at Hippo Direct, and you can reach me at max@hippodirect.com for help using your podcast as a marketing tool. This is episode number 95, and today's guest is Marty Romances. Marty is the co-founder and creative director of Territory Studio, the group behind some of the most amazing on-screen graphics and designs you will ever see. You can check out their work in such franchises as Star Wars, The Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, and The Martian. Marty was named one of the 100 most creative people in the world by Fast Company, and he has spent time designing everything from movie graphics to video games in the cities of Barcelona, London, and San Francisco. Let's get romantic. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Marty Romances, the co-founder and creative director of the amazing Territory Studio, and he is coming to us out of San Francisco. Marty, thanks for joining. How you doing today?
Hi, Max. Thanks for having me. It's good. It's good. It's a good day today.
It is. Just because I'm talking to you. And this is really cool. Your background is so amazing, and what you guys do is really at the cutting edge of design. So we're going to get into plenty things with your day job and Territory Studio. But
Mhm.
before we get to that, to start us off here, when you think back to your childhood, what was your earliest exposure to art or design?
I think I like to say that I've been very lucky to grow up with art and design around me. I'm from Barcelona in Spain, and even the city, it's known for their great architecture, music, art all over. But also, my dad is a guitarist player. Is a guitar player, and my dad has always had, like, as a musician, always had all sorts of instruments around, and music. And then my mom is it was a teacher. It became then like more of an educational director and whatnot for the government. But she was the one always trying to have art projects around the house for me and my sister to do stuff. So even without knowing it, as we were playing, we were just creating. And it was, the art and the music in the background. I always think music is such a structured math. In a way, all the structures and the math behind music are patterns that they definitely write into your subconscious. And I think, like, just to have that background music, my dad, like, I think that I would say was my first exposure, just as I was growing up, as I was 3 years old, 4 years old, I don't know. And I think it is very true to what they say about, people, that there are parents out there. I think it's super important just to nourish those little brains, even if we thought that they are not perceiving it. I'm sure there's something there that's going to come out later on as another form of art. So I would say that I would pick that as my answer.
Absolutely. All right. So that was the only question I have today. Thank you for joining. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's very true. I'm with you on that. I think the amount of impact that experiences you can have as a child, whether it's being exposed to art or music or
Mm.
different things that can be different areas of passion, can really put you on a certain trajectory or develop some enthusiasm for a certain area there. Were you into, as a kid, drawing or sculpting or making art projects, things in that realm?
Yeah, I remember when I was, very very young. I have memories of me and my best friend just drawing, like, on this, taping papers, typical, like, paper, letter paper, into one another, just to create big murals. And just like, almost like recreating the typical, like, Where to Find Waldo, or like this sort of a very dense books that we were exposed to, right? Like, I think we were trying to do these things, and we were just hanging them in our rooms. And I remember things like that. And I think just these are things that, again, like, I wasn't thinking, even a few years back, I wouldn't have thought that that had anything to do. But now you think again, and you start seeing some connections, similar to even later on, in my youth life with video games. I think, to be honest, like the amount of people that are, of course, they say that video games are maybe not so good for kids growing up and whatnot. I think they allowed me to explore worlds that don't exist, to be somewhere else, just to be creative in other ways as well. And of course, you need to limit things. Nothing with excess is good, but I think video games help my creativity a lot as well, and I think that has to be said.
Yeah, I like how you put that, exploring worlds that wouldn't otherwise exist. I mean, that's talk about creativity and
Yeah,
creative ideas. I mean, you're thinking of actual separate worlds there and a whole nother world, just to use that word again,
yeah.
of things that you can play in and live in and create. So at what point did you get started professionally in sort of a design or artistic role? When did it click for you that this could actually become a career path and also something that you're good at?
Yeah, look, I think I started. I wanted to be an architect. Didn't happen. Just too long of a of a degree, too much effort. I couldn't
Yeah.
face it. I had friends and family friends that they had done it, and I was exposed to what it was coming. I decided to just go into something a bit more open and something that I was interested, which was multimedia design. Again, as a gamer, I was interested in interactive stuff. The web was exploding in front of everyone at that time. Multimedia design was a bit of everything at that point. It was a bit of design, a bit of coding, a bit of radio, a bit of cameras, a bit of everything. Allowed me to discover what I didn't like and what I did like. So most of that I didn't like, but there was like the design part and the interactive part that started to be interesting to me, thanks to uni and some of these contests that they were doing over the weekend, which is create a short film in 48 hours over the weekend. Thanks to these little contests that we were doing with my friends, picking up some cameras and just making up some short films really in 48 hours, I discovered the need of, I want a title for my short film, or I want this little thing here to not show. So I started learning more and more into visual effects. How can I remove this little thing from that shot? How can I create a 3D type for my title? And all of these started, you know, I started discovering motion graphics at that point. That was not even like something in our degree classes or university, like that didn't exist there. The closest thing was web design or graphic design of some sort, and 3D. So I started like going out of YouTube and all sorts of books and resources to learn which are those motion graphic softwares that people are using out there. And at that point, we didn't have the amount of accessible software and learning tools that we have now. Like you can have subscription methods for some of the software. It's very easy to get into it. You have tons of tutorials and tons of platforms to learn. At that point, that was a bit more limited. So it was a bit harder, but it made it a bit more exceptional, I would say. And I started dedicating my free time to that. And there was a point where, as a degree, you need to tick the box of professional placement. You had to do 3 months in a place. So, and you could choose whatever to do that at the middle of your degree or at the very end. I choose that to do it pretty much in the middle of it. And I came across one of the post-production houses in Barcelona. And in there, I did my, the typical internship. I was doing a lot of crap, nothing to do with design. But as soon as I started to have an opportunity, I started showing my worth and like how motion graphics could help in a post-production shop like that, just doing little titles, doing little text animated at the end of a commercial, even if it's the legal stuff. And they started trusting me more and more. They end up just offering me a job as a graphics animator for what used to be, and I guess maybe they still exist, the DVD menus. So we all know the DVD interfaces. You go change the scene or go put the subtitles on and
Yeah,
off.
major nostalgia there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I started, and for the first 2 years there, I was doing that. I was just animating transitions between one screen and another screen on this DVD menu designs. In a way, I could say that was my first interaction professionally to designing and animating for interfaces. Even if they were very simple, they all needed to be different because they all needed to have the style of the film and whatnot. Some others were more complicated than others. Like that was a great school for me because at that point I was still finishing my degree, so I had to juggle both things at that time. But I couldn't say no to a job offer when I was 19, right? On something that I love and something that I wanted to do. So I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity. I was very lucky to be offered that job that early. And I think uni and like the theory and everything is super important to understand how things work, especially in design. But I think where you learn the most is on that professional environment. And that was for me the real school, like being in a post-production facility, seeing everything happening around me, all of these people, like the designers creating designs for me to animate, or other guys doing visual effects in the other room. And it was a great environment. So I would say that was where my professional career started.
And you can feel it, just how valuable it is to be more or less thrown into that crazy environment and learning firsthand like that. And I have to ask about this. You worked on porn for a little bit.
Not really. I mean, the only thing the
Well,
only thing
it
that
sounds funny when you put it that way, but you can explain it.
no, I think as an intern, one of the first tasks that I had to do was just like go look at a film and divide that film in 12 scenes for those DVDs, right? And just give the mastering guys the time codes, like, hey, don't cut a scene in the middle, because if the next scene starts in the middle of a phrase or in the middle of a scene or a sequence, it will make zero sense, right? Like, it's just trying to find a good cut. But the thing is, like, that applied to again, as an intern, you have to do everything, and every single beta cam that we were having, every single master had to be cut into 12. And there were porn films where you had to actually also divide them in 12 scenes. And that's kind of the only professional trajectory I had in porn. I think it starts there and stops there, sadly, or I don't know. But yeah, that was the approach there.
Yeah, the rest of this interview could have gone very different if you went down a different
Yeah,
path.
yeah.
But that's it. It's funny how you can always say that you worked in porn, and
Yeah,
I
somehow.
think you can always. I'm not sure if it was a paid or unpaid internship, but you could say it was your job to watch porn. So that's pretty a unique role you got yourself in.
I know lots of people probably will love a job like that. Sadly, it wasn't exactly all about that, but I wouldn't have said no at that point, probably.
In an incredible segue, we're going to go from porn to Territory Studio. So
Wow, big
I think,
time.
yeah, I'm sure that it always comes up that way. But Territory Studio. So along the way, at a pretty early age, you found your passion for design and then motion graphics and in different parts of the post production process. And then at a certain point, you stumbled onto this Territory Studio pretty early on
Mhm.
and started working there in London. How were you introduced to Territory Studio?
So at that point, I after staying in for 4 years in that DVD and post production facility, doing all sorts of stuff. I moved to the UK. I got an offer from Activision, the guys who were doing
Oh yeah,
Call of Duty and Guitar Hero,
uh,
and
Tony Hawk as well, right? Tony Hawk Pro
also, yeah,
Skater.
yeah, yeah. Like these guys have done like a lot, and at that point they were maybe.
These guys made my childhood, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Same, same here. So again, as a gamer, I couldn't refuse the opportunity to go and work and apply my passion skill, which is motion graphics, to my passion hobby, which is video games. So everything clicked. I was 23 years old. I was like, hey, look, why not? My English wasn't existing at that point. Like, I didn't know how to properly express myself, but all I needed is just to apply my skill into that industry. So I think I'll never regret it. It was one of the best things I ever done. Getting out of my comfort zone, I always think, is one of the things that makes you push through and grow faster. So applying my skill set in a different industry, in a different country, with no family and friends around me, like, that was a great experience. The thing is with the video games is they take some time. It's not. I was used to do lots of DVDs every month, every week, and lots of commercials and lots of different projects. Video games take a little bit longer. So I had a lot of, I have great times, great memories. I'm still friends with almost everyone in that office. But at some point, I decided that I wanted to go back to that a bit more hectic pace and a bit more variety of projects around me. So I started looking around, and in London, they were like, I was talking with different people. I was talking with people at the Mill, MPC. Those were pre-established shops, post-production shops in London. But I got to meet David, which is the founder of Territory Studio, through someone who told me that they were starting something, that they were looking for an art director. And at that point, I was already just promoted to an art director position from Activision, and I wanted to talk with them. I remember meeting David in that office and just talking through about what they were creating. As a Territory Studio was very small at that point, and they offered me the art director position. And I think from the beginning, I knew that I had an opportunity, I had a voice in a team, rather than just going to a big very established company with over 500 people. I had the opposite, which is like the very small office, with very little overheads, but with an opportunity to, as an art director, have my voice will be heard, and I will be able to work with these guys something out. And that's what happened. Like we were going project by project. We started to see how we needed more help, and we started hiring more people. Like I remember just like our first producer full time, and then other people like all the motion graphic artists, 3D artists, and whatnot. So that just started to happen, and it was great because I've never experienced that myself. I never experienced the growth from the almost the beginning.
Yeah.
And again, it was a new thing. It was getting out of my comfort zone, and I was trying something, and it worked out. That just was great times. We started to have more and more work, and we started to get more into work that we were very excited about, and we started defining who we are and how we're different to everyone else in the industry. And it's all a day by day, just doing it, making it happen, and just trying to make no mistakes, which you will make mistakes, but trying to establish ourselves. And here we are now, 10 years after, as a global company with different offices around the world. And it's very exciting to have seen it from almost the beginning.
Oh, Marty, I'm sure you don't make any mistakes ever. Come on now.
I do every day.
Yeah,
But you have
come
to,
clean.
you have to, you have to.
You do. So clearly, breaking out of your comfort zone has worked out well for you. I mean, experiencing these different cities, all very famous cities around the world, and doing different things there, and fast forward, and you've gone from early in at this small production studio in London, and now all your way up to creative director, open a new office, San Francisco, featured in Fast Company. I'm sure it's been a whirlwind of different things there. What can you attribute to the success and growth you've experienced there? What stands out to you that's worked really well?
I think it's just like that, a bit of a fearless getting out of the comfort zone situation we described. Like, I know people that we're going back to Barcelona, right? Like, after 4 years, I was very well positioned in that company, and there are people looking at me. It's like, wait, why are you going now to some other thing? Like, you've done it here. You grow to like being like now. You have your department here, and after 4 years in this company, everyone's just gonna really likes your work. You have a great future here. It's like, well, I think there's more, right? And the same after moving to the UK, and jumping to what some people will say a backstep, just jumping to not a bigger office with a bigger salary and a big no, but the opposite, going to a smaller office with less people, less salary. Just to people will have asked, like, why. And the thing is it's sort of like, well, what's there's something to be done there. And the same when 5 years after, when I moved by myself here to San Francisco to start from scratch, living like the office in London. Of course, lots like David and Nick, that my business partners, stayed there, and that office continued to grow. But people were like, well, all of these 5 years that you put in here in the London office, and now you're leaving to nothing because there's nothing there. And I think there's something about it. I think there is something about that creation that, and I will be more than happy to do it again. At some point, if I have an opportunity to go and have another challenge on maybe opening an office somewhere else or just doing something similar, I'll probably jump on it because I've seen it how it works in the past, and I know that as long as you are clear on what's your worth and what your expertise could be applied to, and what are some of the steps that you learned in the past that could work, as long as you follow that and you put lots of effort, of course, and passion, it should work out. And if not, you will get lots of it because you will have learned a ton. And I think there is no wrong in that. If I stayed in Barcelona, I would have never discovered Activision. I would have never met Nick and David. I would have never seen an office grow in London. I would have never had the opportunity to move to San Francisco and grow it a new one myself. So each step allowed me to be where I am, and I think that maybe answers or not your question, but it's
I
how I
don't even
see
know. No, I'm just kidding. It does.
it.
It does. Yeah. And I'm predicting that whenever there are workspaces on Mars, you're going to be one of the first people to go there and experience that new planet, because
Oh
that's
man,
talk about
that's
out of your comfort zone. There you go.
yeah, that's very out of our comfort zone.
Yes, that's the definition. So you guys at Territory do an amazing mix of different things in terms of graphics and design. And for anybody who's not familiar, your work has been featured in blockbuster films ranging from The Martian to Guardians of the Galaxy to Avengers Endgame. And you obviously have the experience with video games and all types of things. I know you're doing some stuff with actual real life products as well. Which of these areas that you work on are you most passionate about? And is the type of design that really is most true to who you are and gets you the most excited?
I think the common denominator for me is always design. Something that needs to be designed. It's always been the first thing that I learned when I was back again in that post-production house. I saw people using visual effects to remove this wire on the corner or to put this tree on the street. I was like, that's very interesting. That's very useful, probably. But what's the fun about it? You're just recreating something. You're just moving it. For me, it was always about I want to create something. I wanted something that doesn't exist and say, look what I made with my own hands, right? And I think that design gives you that, the creation tool, and that's something that I always tried and push for, to do in terms of our work is creating. And the good thing is that we had the opportunity to start creating for some of those films that allow us to think out of the box. Because if you think about it, when we are designing for Avengers, when we are designing for Star Wars, The Martian, all of that stuff, some of them, these are things that do not exist, but we need to fake them so people believe that these technologies, these holograms, and all of this stuff could exist, right? Or exist in that fictional, fantastical world that the director has in mind and they created. That is our playground. That's how I see it. There are no mistakes there, other than maybe the director doesn't like the color. Okay, well, let's change the color or the shape, whatever. But we don't need to be thinking function first when we're creating all of these holograms interfaces of people just flying in space with their spaceship. All of these controls, it's not that we need to be very careful because someone use it and they will crash. It's just no, it needs to solve the narrative, it needs to solve the problem, it needs to please the director that is creating this world, so that our input is this is what we do. The good thing about inverting the process of not thinking function first, but thinking visual appealing, something that's visually appealing first instead, is that you come up with things that if you had thought function first, you will have never get to, because you are free. You don't have restrictions in a way. You just need to
Yeah.
create something. And especially for the things like Guardians of the Galaxy, look, if I create something that is something that you and I understand in terms of an interface of a control of a spaceship, I'm not going to be answering James, the director's brief, because James' vision is these guys come from another galaxy. We shouldn't understand what technology they use, right? So it needs to look abstract. These allow us to play. This is a playground. No thinking function first. But some of the visuals that we come up with, then you reverse engineering is wait, you know what, this weird shit that we created here could be very interesting if we apply it to this functional case study in real life. And this is where the magic happens, because as a company, and myself as an individual, I'm very excited about games and things that don't exist, as you know. But I'm also excited about new technologies and the stuff that's happening right now. And that's why the other half of territory, the other half of the work that we do is very, very focused on real life scenarios, like real interfaces, real designs for products that exist. And those need to be some of them very, very, very functional and very safe. Like we're working with car interfaces designs. It's the most like specific and safe thing that you cannot make any mistakes, because there are people's lives in your hands pretty much. Like if they don't see, I mean, I'm exaggerating it, right? Because we're just making them look good, but they are very
It's
functional
way more
machines.
than that.
We are creating some of these interfaces in a way that they are functional. The same with video games. There are things that people will be playing and pressing those buttons and seeing these interactions on the screen thousands and thousands of times. So the good thing about being in both worlds is that one fits the other. Like when we're doing these like non-fictional and more realistic functional designs, we have in mind the disruption and the fresh ideas that we have when we think outside of the box in those films and TV shows that allow us to go crazy. But at the same time, when we have to do a film that needs us to imagine how things are going to be in 10 years, we are very, very well positioned to, in a way, speculate how that technology will work in 10 years, because we are already working very closely with concepts that are coming in 5, 10 years, right? So this is how one talks to the other. And I think this is why, as I was saying before, we became like a studio and a group of creators that has that very niche output that defines us. And I think these days it's so important to have that identity as a company, especially because I keep talking with people, different managing directors from other companies, and they say this. Some of them they say the same. It's like, well, we're still trying to find who we are. What is, because we can design, we can do this, we can do that, but there are thousands of others that also do all of this. Like, what makes us different? What makes us special for people to knock on our door? And it's like, I want this. Territory Studio, after 10 years, I can say, and we can say, that we have something that is our visual identity, which is we visualize the future. We're creating for iconic walls, always with the design centric mentality and talent. And I think that something like that, kind of the definition, is something that has lots of value these days, because we know who we are, we know how we can grow it, and we know how we can just get more out of our creative minds and in different industries, right? Because that's what I was saying. Like when I saw my skill set applied to video games without ever have been working in the video games industry, I realized that there's a lot of opportunity and territory as a business. We're starting to see that. Like, yes, we did this for films and for games, but we can also do it for this new medium like VR and AR, and we can also do it for this other product that is new and no one knows about. It's
Yeah.
this versatility and just like focusing on what your worth is, which is the creative environment, the creative process.
That's so fascinating that it's split into different worlds there, but you guys excel at such different things. So as you mentioned, half of that is totally visual appeal first, and really limited attention paid to functionality, because when it's on screen and it needs to look good, obviously it doesn't need to to function. But the other part of things is totally where functionality is super important, especially when you're talking about cars and things where the actual safety of people is involved. How do you approach such different things and make sure that you knock each thing out of the park and really excel at it, but there's no confusion there, and that your principles are still very strong kind of on each side?
Well, I think, as I was saying, I think the answer to this is design. As a good example, I always talk about The Martian as a film from Ridley Scott approaching us and saying, look, I know you guys helped me with Prometheus and other things that are very fantastical and futuristic, but this is The Martian. This is something that we need people to believe. that it could happen. It could be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So he wanted us to go and talk to NASA every Wednesday morning. At that point, I was in London. It was very early morning calls with Florida, and we were talking with David Livery, which is the guy who was putting the rovers in Mars. Is the guy who's like the
Oh,
mission
wow.
director. So we were, I was like, well, if they want realism and they put us in touch with these guys, we need to make sure that what we put on those screens and all those graphics is it could realistically function, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And because he wanted to say, okay, well, if there are engineers going to see this film, I don't want them to be laughing at our graphics here and say this will never happen. So we had to go through the learning process, and then once we understood everything, or once we've seen the sort of the tools that they use. Of course, the tools that they use, they don't think about design. They are created for function because they are super important. Some of them are created, most of them, by engineers and for engineers. So there's two problems with this. Like, they don't care about design, and there's a lot of disparity between all of these technologies they use, because one was built yesterday, another one was built 15 years ago, and they both are in the same system, and they look completely different, and there's no cohesive visual connection there, because they don't need it. They just need this to be functional. But at the same time, creates another problem, which is, if we have to talk to an audience, which is everyone going to the cinema, these are not engineers. They're not going to understand that this little number there means that someone is dying, right? They need it
Right.
pretty clear. So we now have to please the director in one hand. We have to please the director and make it look realistic. On the other hand, we need to tell stories and the narrative that these scenes need to solve. So, if there's something happening, probably a flashing warning type in red will make the job for everyone in the cinema, but maybe Ridley won't be that happy because it's not what will happen in real NASA situation now. So what do we do? How we solve it? Well, we solve it through design. The only thing we have to do is come up with a design language and just reskin all of these widgets and technology that NASA has. And the thing is, like, NASA has never thought on design will help us, but there was actually like a little bit of a pendulum effect when, after they've seen the film, they approach us and they say, actually, how funny, like, from your designs, you can flag things very easily and quickly, because it's all like a pretty much like, the layer of design allow better like to read results better and faster, for everything to look part of the system, for the hierarchy to make sense. So my answer is, like, no matter what we have to design for, design, like the design element is what's gonna make the impact. There are car companies that come to us and like, look, we have this, we know that it works, but it looks not as good as as we wanted. We don't change where the things are, but just choose for us how it will all look after you put your design pass on top of it. And it's almost like you then reskin their interior, like, sort of way of thinking, right? That their skeleton, you're just putting a cape on top, which makes it look good. And I think that's kind of what you do with these more functional projects, other than thinking also like ways to improve usability. On the other end is where you don't have to think about function first, as I was saying. Then it's all about design, because then it's whatever you want to do, it will run, as long as it aligns with the film or the story and narrative that you're trying to cover. So yeah, I think that's it. It's design as a common denominator.
Yes, it keeps coming back to design, and it makes sense. So I think you're in the right line of work there. Well, as somebody who needs things, especially in movies, to be as clear as possible to understand, I appreciate that you guys take the real life steps, take the extra mile, well, in your case, extra thousands of miles, to actually speak to these NASA astronauts and researchers, and actually speak to people in real life, to make it not only visually appealing, but really intuitive, so at least the audience and the average person knows what's going on as well. So it's cool that you have that element as well. And on that note, you mentioned The Martian, you mentioned Avengers. I mean, we could go on and on with your list of clients there and where your work has been featured. How did you and the team start getting these blockbuster movies attention, and to actually want to do work with you, to the point that your work is literally featured in these award-winning films?
I think it was so at that point, David was talking to someone who needed some graphics in Prometheus, on-set graphics, meaning that they're gonna have them running on that set on camera. They needed to have something moving in that spaceship because, and they need to be futuristic. That was like the first project that Territory has stamped on, and David worked on that project. Who created then but what we discovered is like, wait a minute, motion graphics can be applied to the film industry that way. It's, when you click to things like, who thought about it? It's just like we're doing motion graphics, films is more about visual effects, but wait, these guys also need graphics, right? So
Yeah.
it's when that happened, we realized that there was an opportunity there. And then we started looking around. It's like, well, no one else is doing this. I mean, not many people are really focusing on that aspect. So we went ahead and we started saying like, okay, where are other opportunities here and there? And there was another film that came up, which was Zero Dark 30, which was like
Oh
all
yeah.
of that film about, taking Osama bin Laden's hideout out and all of that. And guess what? All of these guys came back with a need that it was very different to Prometheus. It was like, no, 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 we need to recreate what the CIA headquarters are looking like. We need to recreate heat maps, satellite imagery, very realistic, And this is something that we need to create because they don't have access to whatever the Pentagon is using. They don't have access to this technology. We have to recreate real stuff, and we did so. And I think those two projects, we discovered that there was a bit like that big difference, which is fantastical or realistic. And those two have been the pillars of all of the rest of the projects, that as soon as we put those in our website, all of these people start knocking on our doors like, wait, you did that? We actually need some of the CIA for our Mission Impossible film and for our Jack Ryan thing. And like, you just pretty much see how these two projects started generating and branching out to more and more and more. And then there's the day when Marvel knocks on our doors like, hi, we're doing Captain America, and we've seen your militaristic stuff here, and we want you guys to start working with us. And then from Captain America to Guardians of the Galaxy to Avengers, as soon as Marvel knocked the door as well, just like we started to have access to Disney, Star Wars happened. Like at that point, we were now very clear on like where we can be very strong at, what's that market that we can corner. And that's kind of what happened. It was and as a feedback to or direction to anyone who wants to be working on something, I would say put in your website, on your portfolio, the stuff that you want to be doing. Because if you only put or leave there the two wedding videos that that you've done for your friend, maybe people will start calling you for wedding videos, and you hate wedding videos, so don't do that, right? Just promote and have in your website what you want to be doing, which is what happened with us, right? We were very clear, like, this is what we've been doing, and that's what allowed other people to discover us. And I think to a point, this keeps happening, right? Like the projects that we put out there are projects that not we are only very proud of, but also projects that the things that we like and we love doing, and that's what we are known for, and that's why that's what helps also clients coming for something that they know what they're gonna get, rather than just like them feeling insecure about like, are these guys going to be able to do that? It's pretty clear what we do. It's pretty clear how we do it. So I think that helps. Also, just educating your clients and making sure that people won't come to us for something that we really don't do, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
it happened.
it did. You put yourself out there. I think you're doing something right if you have Marvel and Disney knocking on your door. I think you have the most popular A-list front door of all time. So congrats on that as well.
Oh, I'm not sure. There's lots of people with great portfolios out there.
Imagine you started your own podcast. You're growing your brand, sharing your expertise, maybe even your terrible puns, and meeting fascinating people. That is awesome. Now, imagine all the hours you've lost every week due to the podcast's demands. Not so awesome. I am your podcast producer. Email me at max@hippodirect.com. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to a section on inspiration and creativity. And you are obviously an extremely creative and thoughtful, especially from a design standpoint, person. And so I'm curious from your end, like, for somebody, for like the average person who doesn't have nearly as much design experience that you have. When you look at all your projects, if you could sort of explain ways to go about design that more of the average person would understand, are there any basic principles or a few key things to keep in mind no matter what sort of thing you're designing or working on at the time?
Yeah, I think what I was saying at the beginning about how music is so amazing when you kind of visualize it and you see the structures and how the structures make sense. I think everything is in a way is connected, and I think design is the same. If you start looking at design, good and what makes good design, I think to me it's like its combination is balance, is composition, is use of space, use of color, use of shapes. It's a combination of that really. But now the thing is, like when you start seeing in music what makes what two notes or what two tones could create a good harmony, is because they vibrate at different frequencies, and when you put them together that vibration kind of makes sense together. And you see that visualized, right? It's the same with colors. Colors are by different frequencies of light vibration that goes through our eyes, so like different colors vibrate at different frequencies, so therefore some combinations of colors will work better than others, right? And in a way, in a music score or something, like the pose, the structure, like these spaces that need to be respected will make a soundtrack or a score, a song flow better or sound better or just have that moment of drama or intensity. And this happens with same with design and space and negative space and where to use it. So I think all of those things are super connected, and to me it's about this eye for understanding how these things work. And sometimes it's just like it's just training your eye. Like we all start at the same, we all start in a blank canvas. Like no one starts with a hidden talent that no, I don't believe in that. Like we all start the same. It's through influences that you will have a better judgment, and that's all it is. If you show me, I don't know, one design before I've ever seen any design in my life, I'll say this is great. But if you then show me a second design, then I have that level of comparison, and I was like, actually, your other design that I thought it was great probably is not that great because this one is better. If you exponentially extrapolate this to everything in life, you realize that the more that you train your eye, especially in design, the more you understand what works and what doesn't. Therefore, when you start working on something and you start drawing some lines or putting some colors, and automatically your brain is almost telling you push this more to the right because you've seen it millions of times, it doesn't work this other way. So that I would say is the key answer. It's just like training your eye, training your tools, of course, sharpening your pencils, and your knives, and that's kind of a very important, but just having that understanding. And that's why I said, like, even if it's very, very important to have that professional experience and learn quick and on the ground how things work, it's also very important to understand the fundamentals of it. And the only way to do that is studying them in a way that the theory is there, right? Like there's lots of groundwork already done that you should absorb before you put it to practice. So both are very, very important, and I think that's pretty much what makes or defines good design.
Well, you're sharpening my creativity as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll put it on your resume. To you, what makes a super creative or over the top, really impressive design compared to a standard design? Is there one or two things you can point to?
Well, look, sometimes this is about creating and not recreating. That's kind of the main thing that I will pull out there. Say, when you see something that it's already been done, and like even us, we do lots of this sort of holograms and fantastical user interface, but we never start. We always start from scratch with new references. We look at other things that are not just when we start a UI project for cars. Let's say we don't look at UI projects for cars that have been done in the past, because otherwise we will have the references in our minds. We will end up redoing what it's already have been done before. If we do the same with films, directors won't come back to us because they will say, well, I need something new because I'm creating a new world. It's fantastical. It comes from a different place, whatever. they need to see fresh and new things. Sometimes for me, the big differentiator is when I see artists, I follow lots of artists and lots of creators in Instagram, Twitter, and whatnot. And what catches my eye is when something is new, right? And you don't need, they're very, very simple things. I remember there's an artist, Lucas Zanotto, was doing something very simple, which it was playing with eyes and different eyes in 3D and different mouth shapes in 3D, and he was creating these loops of these eyes and mouths that were creating different faces, right? That kind of for me was like, look, this is simple, but it's fresh because it's new, because it hasn't been done before, because it has a meaning and it tells a little bit of a story. That's what drives for me, like the difference, like something that
Yeah.
is original. It's pretty much, that's the word. It's original.
Original. Yeah. The originality, that newness there. It goes really well with creativity. So when you frame
Yeah.
it in that light, it's a good way of thinking about things. So let's get to a fan favorite segment called the Wild Business Shout Out of the Week. The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
Okay.
Wild Business Shout Out of the Week. This is where we talk about an ad or campaign that caught your attention. And at the time of this recording, there is the pandemic going on, and so many brands are doing so many different things. And in advertising right now is a really touchy thing because you don't want to come off as tone deaf or inconsiderate of anything. And Nike has put out a hell of an ad. You mind talking about that for a little?
Yeah, I think it was very smart. Is this sort of very, very sharp messaging, as they usually do, which was that campaign just launched right after the pandemic started, and it said "Play inside for the wall." I think to me it's just simple. It's super powerful because these guys are talking to people that exactly what the last thing they want is to stay home, because they want to go out and they want to race and they are athletes. They are passionate about that. And I think the fact how they turned around that and tell them that they're going to be playing for everyone in the world, like it's the world is watching. It was clever. It was put out there very, very nicely, and that's one of the I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I remember seeing it, and for a brand that has as much influence as they do and as much importance and impact and is as omnipresent it seems as they are, to put out something like that, it really just, the messaging was so strong, and I think everybody can resonate with it. And it was so simple as well, like in the images you see on social media that were going around about it. It was just a few words, and that goes back to their slogan, just do it, of how much you can get across in just a few words in it. So it was somehow on brand and just a super important message. So I like that you called out that example.
Yeah, no, I think again sometimes good timing, and sometimes it's less is more, right? And that was it. It was good timing, relevant, super attached to the brand, very, very relevant to all the brand following, and I think that's what it is. It's great.
So let's get to a segment called the unusual. So we're gonna get unusual, not that we've
Okay.
never been unusual before, but pet peeves, quirks, and weird talents. So this could literally be about anything. It doesn't have to be business related. It could be personal life. It could be whatever you want. What is your biggest pet peeve? What kind of annoys you?
Um, I think it's a good one. I think there's something about like loud noises, like someone just closing a door too loud, unnecessary stomping, unnecessary banging. That kind of sometimes just really, really cracks me, and just like, no way, I'm gonna go through it. But that's that. And then there's some, I think everyone will go with that, but there's sometimes people that are just talking about something that they don't know what they're talking about. That's really just infuriates me a little bit, I think.
Oh, you don't
I
enjoy
don't
that? No, I'm
self
just
it's,
messing with you.
it's usually self entitled people, where they're in a position,
Yeah.
they talk, and they just talk for justifying, I don't know, their salary or their time, I don't know, but they're just talking, and I feel like, oh gosh, like it really infuriates me, especially knowing that someone else with great ideas and very, very well, better entitled could be there, right? And that's another one, maybe more industry related than the
Yeah.
stomping ground and doors closing loud.
Well, maybe for the people that don't know what they're talking about, but keep talking and talking, you can counteract that by closing the door very loudly in front of them.
Yeah, that's a
I think
good
that's
way
the
to put
answer.
both together. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. How about quirks? Is there something your friends or family calls you out on? Maybe something about your personality that is unique, but it's part of who you are.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, my fiance always says that I think I'm good at everything, and that's bad. Um,
So
but
humble, so incredibly humble.
I think it's completely wrong. I'm not. I'm not. I suck at so many other things. I don't know, man. I'm always picking on my eyebrows. If that's one, I'm doing it at the moment.
I had a feeling.
When I'm thinking, I just don't know. I'm just not plugging hairs out of my eyebrows. Otherwise, I wouldn't have none at the moment. But yeah, things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're blessed with fantastic eyebrows, there's only so much you can do. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't blame you. And then how on the other, you mentioned there's a lot of things you suck at. On the other side of things, are there some things, they could be little things like, in the grand scheme of things, not important, but things that you're actually really good at? I mean, I call them weird talents, but it could be anything from, saying the alphabet backwards quick to closing the blinds super perfectly every time, you name it, just random tricks like
Look,
that.
now that you say that, I've been told that I'm very good at folding t-shirts and folding clothes in
Really?
general. Yeah,
That is
apparently
very
I'm
helpful.
very meticulous. Like apparently, I live with my fiance, and it's like she always says that I'm treating this as if it was a heart surgery, almost like it's very meticulous. And similar with ironing. When I'm ironing my shirts, apparently I'm very methodical and needs to be done perfectly. So maybe that's that.
Yeah, it's like you used to work at a clothing store or something when it's all
That's what
perfectly
she
laid
says.
out
Now
there on
I
the shelf.
never, never worked in the clothing store, but I don't know. I like things neat, and that's kind of a maybe. Maybe that's I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest.
Yeah,
But
that's a great thing.
yeah,
Well, it's funny if you think about it, it totally applies to what you do with your day job because you're so used to design and there's so many endless things that you've designed that attention to detail is so important. So that clearly carries over to your t-shirt folding
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
maybe, yeah, maybe, yeah. I think could be, yeah.
So let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A here. You ready for it?
Okay, yeah.
All right, let's get wild. Be as ready as you can. What is a tip you can share? Maybe it's your biggest piece of advice from learning a new language, because you mentioned that you really didn't know English before you
Mm.
moved to the UK. What advice do you have for anybody who is interested in learning a new language?
I'll say go and be where that language is spoken, and you don't have an opportunity, or at least like not many opportunities to speak your own native language. Just you're forced to survive. When you were in survival situations, we do our best without even knowing that we can do that much better. And I think that's kind of what happened to me when I moved to the UK. And just be free to speak it, do it. You're gonna do it wrong. You're gonna fail, but then also tell people around you to tell you when something is wrong, and not just to be shy about telling you like, haha, you said that wrong. Just tell them that you are, because that helped me a lot. And especially in the first years, I was like, anything that I do and I say, please tell me. I mean, to the point where I was sending emails to clients with wrong, wrong words. Like I thought caveat for a while. I thought it was caviar. So I
Oh,
was like, that was one of the things I will always remember. Like, oh my god, I send those emails
hey,
saying
that's
cavi.
an easy one to mess up. Don't
Yeah,
don't take that one
yeah.
hard.
It
Yeah,
sounded too similar in the UK, and
yeah.
English accent there.
Well, I have to say, for somebody who, in the grand scheme of things, didn't learn English all too long ago, your English is incredible. And the amount of words you have and say correctly is pretty amazing. So your approach clearly works with that. I think that's good advice there.
No, thank you. That's good.
Of course, then we'll celebrate with caviar. So you've also, in addition to living in the UK, so you've lived in Barcelona, you've lived in London, you've lived in San Francisco, three of the biggest and most famous cities in the world. What's the biggest difference in those cities? Like, is it what comes to mind first when you think about the differences across those?
I think it scales. When I was living in Barcelona, I was like, wow, this is a great city. It's a big city. It's amazing, metropolis, whatnot. Then you leave and you move to London. It's like, okay, this is a big city. Come on. And then you move to San Francisco and America in general, and you're just like, holy shit, how big is this? Like, not San Francisco maybe,
Right?
but the whole state. Like, I before all of this pandemic happened, I was flying around a lot. I was going down to LA for a meeting with the director coming back then flying to New York, and that's the scale of the place. Like, I would have never thought when I was in Barcelona that to go, get a flight, go to London, do a meeting and back. I was out of the reality of that world. But
Yeah.
now I'm just doing it, going down to LA or going up to Vancouver, and this is crazy. Like the scale and the perspective. Every time that I move, there's some big scale change, and that's being pretty much like something that it's worth highlighting.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things I think is so cool about Europe and the UK is that in such a relatively short distance, you can experience such a different culture and literally a different language and different foods and all sorts of different
Yeah.
parts of history and all that. Whereas in the US, that distance might be just going over one state or the other. And yeah, there's different, cultures a little bit different in different areas, but it's not like people are speaking a different language in different areas.
Yeah.
It's
No,
very different.
the thing is, like, once you've grown up there, and you experience that, or you live there, you don't realize that. You have no idea. You think that that's the most normal thing, right? That's it. It's only when you leave it's like, actually, holy shit, that's what you said, right? Like, that's true. Like,
Yeah.
it's so compact. But in another way, it's just like you're learning this because you're not in it. And it's a weird thing. Yeah, I think moving is so great for everyone. If you have the opportunity to move and experience a different culture, different country, it's very, very rewarding, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, you said it yourself earlier. It opens yourself to new worlds. That's our way to do it on earth here. So, I'm kicking myself because I infamously am terrible at rapid fire Q&A, and here we are and we're only two questions in. So I'll try to be a
Okay.
little quicker with these other three, but
I will try to
hey,
be
I
quicker on the
I
answer.
just love conversing. I love discussing things. So sue me,
Me too. Me too.
So having that background in Barcelona and the arts and obviously architecture is, Barcelona is one of the most famous cities in the world for architecture. Who would you say is your favorite architect, your most favorite architect of all time?
Wow, that's a tricky one. I think, I mean, I will stick home and just stick with Gaudi. I mean,
Okay,
uh,
okay.
I
I
cannot
knew
I
I knew it
cannot
was a favorite, but I didn't know if you go with it.
Well, the thing is, like, I it's not that I dislike the style. I'm more into minimalism and, sort of a brutalist architecture and whatnot. But what the guy did at that time, without the tools that we have now, what that guy did is insane. Like, the amount of detail without 3D printing, with
Yeah,
everything, like the designs and the approach. You cannot. It's insanely skilled. So yeah, I'll go with Gaudi.
that no shame in that choice. And what would you say is the biggest difference in designing for video games versus films?
I think the big difficulty on designing for video games is that you have to create something that is appealing, that is something that you understand as soon as you jump into a new game, right? All of that interface is new, everything is new. But also, you're going to be playing this video game thousands of times. So even after these thousands of times, these graphics still need to be appealing and they need to be exciting. A film, you will be seeing it and you'll be gone. So it's a one-off opportunity. So
Mm,
it's a definitely different approach. I think, different opportunity there.
yeah, I never thought about it that way, but it's funny you hear people talking about how it's hard to watch a really, really, really long movie. However, people will binge through shows on Netflix like it's
Mm.
nothing. The same thing happens with video games. I mean, I think back to my childhood and the amount of times I was playing Call of Duty or Tony Hawk Pro Skater for hours and hours on end, and you think, well, that's the length of like 2 or 3 movies. The
Yeah.
amount of time you're spending looking at the actual elements of the video games versus films is completely mammoth over it. So
Yeah.
that's a really good point there.
Yeah. They're reworking, they're remastering Tony Hawk's skateboard. You know that, right?
Yeah. That's new.
Get.
Yeah, that's hot off the press. So we'll see. I'm trying to get Tony Hawk on. So if you see him around, if you see the Birdman, if you see him around, just say, hey, Max is waiting for you. So
Okay,
appreciate
I
it.
will. I
Yeah.
will.
Okay. I'm sure you see him all the time. But yeah, that's exciting. Definitely takes us back. And then last thing, if you were not in the design world and in the graphics world, what do you think you'd be doing professionally?
Uh, phew. I would like to say, I mean, probably not architecture because I would have never gone with it at the end. Maybe cooking. I really enjoy cooking. And maybe it's just because it's one of these hobbies that I like that doesn't involve a screen, and with my work, screens and screen time is pretty heavy. So when I cook, which I cook every day here at home, I really enjoy it, and I'm getting better and better at it every day since since I moved. So maybe yeah, I will go with cooking. I will go maybe open a little restaurant, some Catalan food for the world.
Ooh, that would be amazing. Yeah, you can't go wrong there. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Marty. This has been outstanding. This has been so great talking about caviar. No, no, just kidding. But talking about all of your thoughts and experiences in the design world and the amazing things you've done at Territory and beyond. Thanks again for coming on. And where is the best place for people to connect with you personally, and then to check out the awesome work that Territory Studio has done?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. It's been
Of
great time.
course.
We are very open to everyone just approaching us. I'm myself as Marty Romances. You will find me on Twitter, and I'm active and always posting things around and just open into discussions and answering messages. Definitely check out our company Twitter and Instagram, Territory Studio, or our website, which is territorystudio.com. There you can see the different work that we do in different industries, and the thing about working with some of these blockbusters and big films, like, people is great, but people think that we are not approachable, and actually I think it's not true. We do work with startups. We do work with the smaller operations and projects that are very, very exciting, and we always try to optimize and make it work for everyone so we can participate on these exciting projects. That's what we are after. So yeah, feel free to approach us and or me, and sure we can create something together.
You're the definition of approachable. I mean, you have Marvel and Disney, Star Wars literally knocking on your door. So I don't think you need to do anything else to prove that. Well, thanks again. And last thing here, final thoughts. The stage is yours. It could be a quote or a line, a poem, whatever you want. Send us off here.
Okay. I will say, oh, well, you got me there.
I stumped you at the last question.
I
You had a
would
good
say
run.
a quote that I really like is, a user interface is like a bad joke. If you have to explain it, it means that it's not that good.
Oh,
It's a bit of a niche one.
that one hits way too close to home for me.
Yeah. Okay. So
That's
yeah,
great.
I'll go with that. Or what I said, train your eye, because it's all about comparison, right? So yeah,
Perfect. Well, thanks, Marty,
cool.
and keep up
Thanks, Max.
the amazing work. See it on screen soon.
Definitely. Thank you very much. It's been amazing.
And here I am wondering why I am constantly having to explain my jokes. Thank you, Marty, for sharing your amazing story, design principles, thoughts on creativity, and much, much more. And thank you, Wild listeners, for tuning into another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Good Pods, where you can find all the podcasts your friends and family are listening to. In addition, you can check out our marketing and business growth resources at hippodirect.com/blog and hippodirect.com/newsletter. That newsletter is the Hippo Digest, and it's your place for wild marketing ideas every single week. And last but not least by a long shot, come say hey on your favorite social media channels at the handles Hippo Direct and Max Branstetter. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!